Thank you, Diane. It's always a privilege to be in this extraordinary building, my favorite newspaper. Thank you, Randy, for having the idea of doing this. And of course, thank you, Kate. It is an extraordinarily privilege to be part of the Bloomberg administration and the just incredible work that has happened in the arts in the last 8 years under the leadership of Mayor Bloomberg, First Deputy Mayor Paris, and of course, our best Commissioner of the Arts. We wanted to call this Creating New York's Newest Playground for the Arts. And we'll talk a little bit about the strategy to reactivate Governor's Island, the sort of lessons we've learned. And then, of course, I couldn't resist the opportunity to just give you a quick preview of the future, the Park and Public Space Plan, which was announced a couple of weeks ago. But before I start, I just wondered if people could raise their hands in the room if you're either artists or presenters who have done work on Governor's Island, because I see a lot of people. And then people who have been on the island as audience members, because I see a lot. So it is really thanks to you, what I'm going to show you today. One of our goals, of course, was to make Governor's Island a living, breathing part of New York City, and the only reason that that's begun to happen is because of the people in this room. But I also wanted to acknowledge one of our partners in crime, Patty Riley, is here, who is my counterpart for the 22 acres run by the National Park Service, and we have a wonderful partnership, as well as several members of our staff. So this is, of course, the beautiful island picture. And the question had always been, for many years, going back even to the 19th century, what should this island be? And when I started working on the island, I, like many New Yorkers, had never heard of it, even though I grew up here. But I realized relatively quickly that the question was really not what should the island be, but what should happen first. And in 2006, we worked to develop a strategy, and this is how we spend all of our time and all of taxpayer money. And everything we do is about expanding visitation and what we call signature early uses, continuing to invest in stabilization of our beautiful historic buildings and the infrastructure on the island, creating a world-class park and public space, and developing a real mixture of uses that will take place over multiple phases. And as Kate mentioned, we started with the arts, really thinking of the arts as a catalyst and what we call a signature early use. And of course, this was not a new idea. There were many artists who had already been pioneers on the island. Photographers like Andrew Moore and Lisa Kareji had documented the sort of island in its state when it first was turned over by the federal government. And many people had spoken of their hopes for artist residencies and studios. But back in 2006, as we began to develop a much more coherent strategy to attract arts programs. And we really started with the premise that we had to think about arts programs that aren't already happening in New York City, that really take advantage of the island's attributes, and of course, justify the visitor's journey. It's a schlep to get to Governor's Island, and so if you're going to come, it has to be worth it. So how do you do that in a city that is the cultural capital of the world? What can we learn from arts experiences in other places? And to be honest, our question was more direct, which was what's not happening in New York? Now, when the mayor asked me to take this job, one of my qualifications that he didn't know about was that I'm a native New Yorker who had left. And so I'd actually had the sort of heretical experience of experiencing arts in other places. So, that's often in our cultural community. We're all gathered here together. So I'm going to show you some images of cultural experiences, both that I've had and that we began looking as we began to think about what could happen, what's not in New York. So one is Bumbershoot, this amazing arts festival in Seattle, where I lived for many years. You'll see a lot of Seattle images here. Again, known as a music festival, but it's actually spoken word, lots of things, incredible gathering, people of all ages. The Olympic Sculpture Park in Seattle is another place that was under development when I was there. It's a public park, but it's owned by a museum, but it's not contiguous with a museum. One of my life-changing experiences was going to a Bob Dylan concert here at the Gorge in actually George, Washington. That's the name of the town. And the notion that it is life-changing to see a concert in a place that is so spectacularly beautiful. I also had the experience about 25 years ago of coincidentally going to the Netherlands, and I thought this was mind-blowing as a New Yorker. There were these free bicycles, and I hopped on one of these bicycles in the middle of the Netherlands and went to this amazing sculpture park called the Kroller-Müller Sculpture Garden. So these were all experiences, and again, these images were images that we kept on thinking about in 2006. What kinds of experiences aren't in New York? This is in Istanbul. I went to one of the early biennials in Istanbul. Site-specific work, of course, happening around the world. Art Basel in Miami, what's so amazing for those of you who've been there is that the whole city is just taken over by art for a number of days, including, and this is a direct inspiration for the hammocks on Governor's Island. This picture was taken by my husband, incredible hammocks outside one of the art fairs. And we began looking, obviously we're surrounded by water, what kinds of wild artistic experiences happen. This is in Baltimore, the kinetic sculpture race. Burning Man, and of course, Kate alluded to Figment, so we have our own version of Burning Man on Governor's Island, but this incredible spectacle. And then music festivals that take over cities and places. The New Orleans Jazz Festival, which not coincidentally also has amazing food. And then Tanglewood, and one of the amazing things that you see when you go to Saratoga, to SPAC, or Tanglewood is not just obviously the music that you hear, but this just sense of celebration and vacation enjoyed by music goers. And we began thinking about the notion of a sort of multi-venue performing arts festival. This, of course, is in South Carolina, but obviously Spoleto came originally from Italy. And when you go and you look around the world, you'll see whether it's in Australia, or in Europe. This is the Oral Festival in the Netherlands, which did come in another form to Governor's Island last year. This is Nuit Blanche in Paris, an inspiration for what included Punk Island, the Avignon Theatre Festival, the Edinburgh Festival. And then closer to home, obviously many people know Storm King. And so again, back in 2006, we had this vision of kind of what the arts could do on Governor's Island. And I just want to close with one of the most transformational experiences I've had, which actually was in Central Park. This is Janet Cardiff's piece produced by the Public Art Fund, where you had, this is old technology, audio as actually a little disc, and you walked through the park and you were completely transported. So back in 2006, we started talking about these things and thinking about how could they take place on the island. If you build it, they will come, and what we've done since 2006. So we sort of started with these visions, these sort of crazy ideas, things like miniature golf designed by artists. Many people wouldn't return our phone calls back in 2006, but we've started to become a real place. That image is from Pioneers of Change, which took place last year. So our growth in visitorship has really mapped very directly to the growth in cultural programming. This is not an accident. So back in 2006, the first year I worked on the island, we had 26,000 visitors, grew to 56,000, 128,000, and then of course 275,000 last year. This is in a 60-day season, so we are only open seasonally 3 days a week. And you can see that there's obviously a direct correlation and a direct, there's causality here as well between the increase in our cultural and artistic programming and visitors, not only more and more of them coming to the island, but they stay longer and they fall in love with the island because of what they get to do. How did we do this? First of all, it was our passion and commitment throughout the organization. If you come to Governor's Island, our security guards, our boat crew, everyone who works on the island is equally committed to making this an amazing place for visitors and an amazing place for partnership with our arts partners. And there are many of you are here and can talk about our eagerness to try the unproven, whether it's a cow as the icon for the theater festival, or Nigel Redden's team is here, and they will be producing a 12-hour opera about terrorism in the 19th century. So we are always eager. I didn't think we could be surprised, but Nigel has managed to surprise us for this coming season. We try to make our permits and our process as easy as possible, but we have no programming budget, and we don't curate. So we like to say we don't choose the plants in our organic farm, nor do we choose the artists at LMCC's program, nor the pieces that Creative Time produced. What we've learned